The escape pod tumbled through space, its systems beeping in protest as First Scout tried to remember everything their parent had taught about emergency protocols. Their antennae twitched nervously as they worked the unfamiliar controls, fighting to keep their younger siblings calm while stars spun dizzyingly outside the viewport. "Hold tight," First Scout called out, their voice steady despite their racing heart. "Deep chirp, check the power levels. Little wing, stay in your safety harness." The pod wasn't meant for three young mantids. It was barely larger than their family's dining space back on the transport ship, with just enough room for the emergency supplies and basic navigation equipment. The walls seemed to close in around them as another explosion lit up space behind them. Deep Chirp's claws clicked rapidly over the diagnostic panel. Power at 68%. Life support stable. They paused, mandibles trembling. "First Scout, do you think Mother and Father? They'll be fine." First Scout cut in quickly, though their own heart ached with worry. Just moments ago, they had been having their evening meal when the alarm started. Their parents had rushed them to the escape pod, mandibles set in grim determination as they explained that pirates had ambushed their civilian transport. Little Wing huddled in their corner, all four arms wrapped tightly around themselves. "I'm scared," they whispered, their usually bright green exoskeleton now a pale, fearful shade. "The pirates. The stories say they sell children to the humans." First Scout's antennae flattened against their head. Humans. Every young mantid knew the stories. Tall, furless beings who had fought their people to a standstill in the border wars. Warriors so fierce that even the eldest warriors spoke of them with careful respect. But right now, humans were the least of their worries. The pod's sensors shrieked a warning. Deep Chirp's head snapped up. "3 ships closing in. Pirates." Their voice cracked with fear. "They're trying to lock on to us." First Scout's training kicked in. They might be young, but they were still of the Scout caste. Their people had survived for generations by being quick and clever. "Everyone quiet," they ordered, hitting the pod's power dampeners. "Remember what teacher told us about asteroid hiding." The pod's lights dimmed to almost nothing. In the darkness, First Scout could hear their siblings breathing, too fast and shallow. They reached out with one arm, keeping the other 3 on the controls, and touched Deep Chirp's shoulder. "Remember the breathing exercises. In through the spiracles, out through the mandibles." For several tense minutes, they drifted, the pod's minimal power signature hopefully masking them among the debris from their damaged transport ship. First Scout tried not to think about how many others might have escaped, or whether their parents had made it to another pod. Little Wing broke the silence with a tiny chirp. "Look, the pirates are turning away." Deep Chirp checked the sensors. "They're pursuing the other escape pods." Their voice grew small. "The ones with adults." First Scout felt their hearts clench. Adults would be more valuable to pirates than children. It was cold logic, but it might save their lives. Still, the thought of other pods being captured. "What do we do now?" Little Wing asked, their color slowly returning to normal as the immediate danger passed. First Scout studied the navigation display. They were far from any major trade routes. Their transport had been taking a shortcut through this sector. The nearest colony was at least 2 days away at their pod's best speed, and that was assuming they had enough power to make it. "We follow the emergency protocols," First Scout said firmly. "Set course for the nearest colony. Stay quiet, and—" The pod's sensors screamed again. Deep Chirp's mandibles clattered in shock. "New contact. Much bigger than the pirates. It's coming straight for us." First Scout's hearts nearly stopped as the sensor data scrolled across their screen. The ship was huge, sleek, and moving with the deadly purpose of a military vessel. And there, clear as starlight on the recognition screens, was the one symbol they had been taught to fear above all others. A human warship had found them. Captain Stone stood on the bridge of the patrol ship Arrow, his weathered face illuminated by the soft blue glow of holographic displays. 20 years of military service had left their mark in the gray at his temples, and the quiet confidence in his stance. His eyes, however, remained sharp as they tracked the small blip moving across the tactical screen. "Report," he ordered, keeping his voice calm despite the tension running through the bridge crew. Lieutenant Reed's fingers danced across her console. "Small vessel, sir. Escape pod class. No identification beacon, but energy signature matches Mantis technology." She hesitated. "Sir, initial scans show multiple life signs aboard." Stone's jaw tightened. The border wars might have ended 5 years ago, but encounters with Mantis vessels were still rare and often dangerous. Pirates had been using this sector lately, preying on civilian ships and leaving destruction in their wake. This pod could be connected. "Show me the detailed scan," he said, stepping closer to Reed's station. The three-dimensional display shimmered to life, showing the pod's internal layout. 3 distinct heat signatures huddled inside, much smaller than adult Mantis signatures he'd seen in combat briefings. The ship's AI chimed in, its neutral voice filling the bridge. "Alert. Mantis vessel detected. Combat protocols initiated. Weapons systems online." "Belay that," Stone ordered sharply. "Keep weapons powered down." He studied the scan more carefully, decades of experience warring with the military protocols drilled into every border fleet captain. Reed looked up, confused. "Sir, regulations require us to treat all unauthorized Mantis vessels as potential threats." Stone remembered his first encounter with Mantis forces, back when he was a young lieutenant. The terror in the eyes of captured civilians had haunted him. He'd sworn then to never let fear drive his decisions. "Look at those life signs again, Lieutenant," he said quietly. "Notice anything unusual about their size?" Reed's eyes widened as understanding dawned. They're children, aren't they, sir?" "Computer, analyze life sign patterns and compare to known Mantis biological data," Stone commanded. The AI processed for a moment. Analysis complete. Life signs consistent with juvenile Mantis specimens. Estimated ages between 8 and 12 standard years. Stone's hand unconsciously moved to the pocket where he kept a photo of his daughter back on Earth. She was 10 now, probably doing her homework or playing with friends. These children, whatever their species, were someone's daughters and sons too. "Sir," the sensor officer called out, "we're picking up residual weapons signatures in the sector. Recent combat, within the last hour. And there's debris. Looks like a civilian transport was attacked." The pieces clicked into place. Pirates had hit a Mantis transport, and these children had escaped in the chaos. Now they were alone, probably terrified, in a pod that was never meant for long-term survival. "New contact," Reed announced suddenly. 3 ships just dropped out of FTL, matching known pirate signatures from the watch list. Stone's decision crystallized. "Battle stations," he ordered, his voice carrying the authority of 2 decades in command. "But not for the pod. Lieutenant Reed, calculate an intercept course for those pirate vessels. Ensign Taylor, prepare the tractor beam. We're bringing that pod in first." The bridge erupted into controlled activity. Stone watched as his crew, initially tense at the prospect of a Mantis encounter, now moved with purpose. They understood what was at stake. "Sir," Reed said softly, "the pod is trying to power down. They're using basic stealth protocols. They must be terrified." Stone nodded. "Broadcast on all frequencies. General communication only. Keep weapons powered down. We don't want to frighten them more than they already are." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "And prepare the medical bay. Have Dr. Wells set it up for juvenile Mantis. No restraints, no armed guards. These aren't our enemies. They're children who need our help." As the arrow moved into position, Stone thought about how one moment could change everything. Today, he had a choice between following protocol and following his conscience. And maybe, just maybe, this choice could help heal wounds left by years of war. "Let's show them," he said quietly. that humans can do more than fight. First Scout's hands trembled on the pod's controls as the massive human ship grew larger in their view screen. Their antennae pressed flat against their head, picking up the worried vibrations from their siblings. "They're going to catch us," Deep Chirp whispered, all four hands gripping the sensor panel. "The human ship is too fast." Little Wing had turned an even paler shade of green. "Can't we go any faster?" First Scout pushed the pod's engines harder, making the small vessel shake. They remembered their parents' stories about human ships, how they were built for war, how they could outrun and outfight anything in known space. But they had to try. "Hold on tight." First Scout called out, then yanked the controls hard to the right. The pod spun wildly, diving between two large pieces of debris from their destroyed transport ship. Warning lights flashed across the control panel as the engines strained. Aboard the Arrow, Captain Stone watched the escape pod's desperate maneuvers with growing concern. The pod was flying erratically, nearly crashing several times. "Sir," Lieutenant Reed reported, "at this rate, they're going to either burn out their engines or hit something. Their power levels are dropping fast." Stone leaned forward in his command chair. "Those aren't evasion patterns I recognize from manted combat training." He watched as the pod narrowly missed another piece of debris. "Those are the moves of someone who barely knows how to fly." "The pirates are changing course," the sensor officer announced. "They're coming back around. They must have spotted us." Stone's expression hardened. "Put me on broadcast. All frequencies. Basic translation protocols." Back in the pod, First Scout was running out of ideas. The human ship was getting closer, no matter what they tried. Their hearts pounded as they remembered teachers' lessons about human warfare, how humans never gave up once they started hunting. Suddenly, a voice filled their pod, speaking in broken but understandable manted clicks and chirps. "Attention escape pod. This is Captain Stone of the Earthship Arrow. We mean you no harm. Your pod is in danger. Please allow us to help." "It's a trick," Deep Chirp cried out. Everyone knows humans say things like that before they attack. First Scout wanted to believe the voice. It sounded different from what they expected of humans, but fear won out. They pushed the engines again, diving under a spinning chunk of metal. The pod's engines coughed and sputtered. Warning sirens blared through the tiny cabin. "Power failing," Deep Chirp announced, their voice shaking. "We've got maybe 2 minutes of flight left." Little Wing started to cry, a soft keening sound that made First Scout's hearts ache. "I don't want to die," they whispered. "I want Mother and Father." First Scout made their decision. Using the pod's simple communication system, they sent out a message, not to the human ship, but toward home, hoping somehow it would reach their parents. "This is First Scout, with Deep Chirp and Little Wing. We tried to be brave. We love you. We're sorry we couldn't make it home." On the Arrow's bridge, Stone heard the translation of the children's message. His face softened as he recognized the fear in those young voices. "Lieutenant Reed," he ordered, "power up the tractor beam. Minimal strength. We don't want to damage their pod. And get me Dr. Wells. Tell her to bring any comfort items we have in storage that might help scared children feel safe." The Arrow's tractor beam reached out, gentle as a parent's touch, and caught the failing pod just as its engines gave out. First Scout tried one last desperate maneuver, but there was no power left to resist. The three manted children huddled together in the pod's cabin, their antennae intertwined for comfort as they waited for whatever would come next. Through the viewport, they could see the human ship's massive hull drawing them in, its shadow falling over their tiny vessel. First Scout held their siblings close. "Remember what Mother always says," they whispered. "Be brave, be kind, and keep your hearts strong." The pod settled softly into the Arrow's landing bay with a gentle thud. The children held their breath as they heard the sound of the airlock cycling. Whatever happened next would change their lives forever. Captain Stone stood in the Arrow's landing bay, watching through the observation window as the manted escape pod cooled down from its desperate flight. Behind him, Dr. Wells organized her medical kit while security personnel shifted nervously. "Sir," Lieutenant Reed's voice came through his earpiece, "the computer is still recommending standard containment protocols. We should send in armed guards first." Stone touched the photo in his pocket, his daughter smiling on her 10th birthday, cake frosting on her nose. He remembered the children's final message, meant for their parents. Not a threat or a trick, just 3 scared kids saying goodbye to their family. "No," he said firmly. "Clear all armed personnel from the bay. Dr. Wells stays, everyone else out." "But sir, regulations clearly state." "These aren't enemy combatants, Lieutenant. They're children who just watched their home get destroyed." Stone's voice softened. "Sometimes we have to choose between following rules and doing what's right." Inside the pod, the 3 young mantids trembled as they heard movement outside. First Scout had positioned themselves in front of their siblings, all 4 arms spread wide in a protective stance. "Remember," First Scout whispered, their antennae twitching, "if they take us, we stay together, no matter what." Deep Chirp worked frantically at the pod systems. "Maybe I can send another distress signal. Maybe someone else will come." Little Wing just stared at the pod's hatch, their color shifting between fearful pale green and terrified white. The humans in the stories always wear big black armor, with weapons that glow red. They all froze as they heard the airlock cycle. First Scout's hearts pounded so hard they were sure the humans could hear them. The outer hatch opened. Captain Stone took a deep breath and straightened his uniform, his regular duty uniform, not combat armor. He'd left his sidearm in his quarters. "Dr. Wells, stay by the medical station. Let's not overwhelm them." He pressed the pod's external communication button. When he spoke, the ship's systems translated his words into mantid speech patterns. "Hello, children. I'm Captain Stone. You're safe now. We've detected pirate ships in the area, but my ship will protect you. Would you like to come out? We have food and medical care if you need it." Inside the pod, the children looked at each other in confusion. This wasn't how the stories went. Humans were supposed to be fierce warriors who showed no mercy. "He's not wearing armor," Deep Chirp observed, peering through the viewport. "It could still be a trap," First Scout said, but their antennae had perked up slightly with curiosity. Little Wing moved closer to the viewport. "He looks kind, like Teacher does when we're scared." Stone waited patiently, keeping his posture relaxed and open. He remembered how his daughter acted around scared animals. Calm, gentle, patient. "We heard your message," he said softly. "The one for your parents. We're going to try to find them, I promise. But first, we need to make sure you're okay." First Scout felt their resolve wavering. They were tired, hungry, and the pod's air was getting stale. And this human, he wasn't anything like the stories. If we come out," First Scout called through the pod's speaker, their voice shaking, "we stay together." "Of course," Stone replied immediately. "All 3 of you together. You have my word as a captain." And he paused, touching his pocket again. "As a father." Dr. Wells stepped forward, her medical scanner already showing concerning readings from the pod's life support system. "Captain, their air recyclers are almost spent. We need to get them out soon." Stone nodded but kept his voice calm. "Children, your pod systems are running low. We can help. Will you trust us?" Inside the pod, First Scout looked at their siblings. Deep Chirp nodded slowly. Little Wing had stopped trembling, their color returning to a more natural green. First Scout took a deep breath and reached for the pod's hatch release. Sometimes, they realized, being brave meant taking a chance on kindness. The hatch opened with a soft hiss, and for the first time, human and mantid children faced each other without fear between them. The landing bay of the Arrow felt enormous to the 3 young mantids as they took their first careful steps out of their pod. First Scout led the way, their antennae constantly moving to catch any sign of danger. Deep Chirp stayed close behind, while Little Wing clutched their sibling's hand tightly. Captain Stone remained perfectly still, keeping his movements slow and deliberate when he did move. He'd dealt with scared children before. Species didn't matter when it came to fear. "Welcome aboard the Arrow," he said softly, the translator converting his words into gentle clicks and chirps. "Are any of you hurt?" First Scout stopped a few steps from the pod, their green eyes studying the human carefully. This close, they could see the strange smoothness of human skin, the odd way they balanced on just two legs. But what caught their attention most was the human's expression, something they'd never seen in any of the warning pictures about humans. He was smiling. Dr. Wells stepped forward slowly, holding up her medical scanner. "I'm the ship's doctor," she said through the translator. "Would it be okay if I check to make sure you're all healthy?" Little Wing peeked out from behind First Scout, their color shifting to a curious blue-green. "Your machine makes pretty lights," they said softly. The doctor's gentle laugh seemed to break some of the tension. Even Deep Chirp's antennae relaxed slightly. "The air feels different here," Deep Chirp noted, their technical curiosity starting to overcome their fear. "It's cleaner than the pod." "We adjusted our environmental systems to match mantid preferences," Stone explained. "Would you like to see how it works?" Deep Chirp's eyes lit up, but they looked to First Scout for permission. First Scout felt their own fear starting to fade. These humans were nothing like the stories. They were kind. "We'd like that," First Scout said carefully. "But first, you said something about finding our parents." Stone's expression grew serious but remained gentle. "Yes, my ship is already scanning the sector. But first, let's get you three some food and rest. You've been very brave, but even brave explorers need to take care of themselves." As they walked toward the medical bay, Little Wing suddenly reached out and touched Stone's hand with one of their smaller arms. Everyone froze for a moment. Such contact between species was rare. "Your hand is warm," Little Wing said, sounding surprised. "Just like Mother's." The next few hours aboard the Arrow were full of surprises for both humans and mantids. The children discovered that the human medical bay had special beds sized just for them, with soft blankets that reminded them of home. Dr. Wells showed them how human medical tools work, even letting Deep Chirp examine the scanner that had fascinated them. "The pirates hid our ship here," First Scout explained, pointing to a star chart in the ship's briefing room. They were sitting on a specially adjusted chair, feeling more confident after food and rest. "Mother and Father got us to the escape pod just before." Their voice trailed off, antennae drooping. Stone nodded understanding. "We'll find them," he promised. "My ship is the fastest in this sector, and we've already sent messages to other human vessels nearby." "Why are you helping us?" Deep Chirp asked suddenly. "All our lessons say humans and mantids are enemies." Stone thought for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "Sometimes adults forget something very important," he said. "That children, human, mantid, or any species, deserve to be protected and cared for. War is for adults to worry about. Children should be safe." Little Wing, who had been drawing pictures with some colored markers provided by the crew, looked up. "We were wrong about humans," they said simply. "The stories only told part of the truth." Before Stone could respond, Lieutenant Reed's voice came over the intercom. "Captain, we found something." A distress signal, matched to the children's transport. The children's antennae shot up in hope. Stone was already moving. "Location: near the second moon of the gas giant, sir. The signal's weak, but it's there. And sir, we're picking up life signs." First Scout jumped up, all four arms trembling with excitement. "Our parents might be alive." Stone smiled. "Let's go find out. Would you like to come to the bridge and watch?" The children's eyes went wide. Humans never invited non-humans onto their bridges. That was another thing everyone knew. But as they followed Stone through the ship's corridors, they realized that maybe it was time to learn some new things about humans. The Arrow's bridge crew watched in amazement as their captain led three young mantids onto the command deck. Some had never seen manted children before, and none had ever expected to see them on their bridge. "Helm, set course for that signal," Stone ordered. "Maximum safe speed." As the ship changed direction, Little Wing pressed their face against a viewport, watching the stars shift. "It's beautiful," they whispered. "Like dancing lights," Deep Chirp agreed, their technical interest captured by the navigation displays. First Scout stood beside Stone's command chair, their posture straight and proud despite their small size. "Thank you," they said quietly, "for choosing to help instead of hurt." Stone looked down at the young manted, seeing not an alien child but simply a child, brave, hopeful, and wise beyond their years. "Thank you," he replied, "for being brave enough to trust us." As the Arrow raced toward the distress signal, its crew watched their captain and the three young mantids with new understanding. Today they had learned something too. That mercy wasn't weakness, and that sometimes the bravest choice was to see past fear and find the good in others. The ship's sensors continued to pick up more life signs from the damaged transport. Hope grew with each passing moment. Whatever happened next, something important had changed today. A human had chosen mercy over fear, and three young mantids had learned that sometimes the best stories are the ones that prove old fears wrong. A Little Wing, who had been drawing again, tugged at Stone's sleeve. "Look, I made this for you." The picture showed the Arrow, but transformed through a child's imagination. In Little Wing's drawing, the ship was wrapped in rainbow colors, with hearts and stars around it. Written in careful letters were the words, "The Kind Ship." Deep Chirp, who had spent the past months exchanging technical knowledge with the Arrow's engineering crew, pointed to a new addition to the station's docking bay. "They're building a special school here," they explained proudly, "where human and manted children can learn together. I'm going to study there." Stone smiled, remembering the desperate chase through space that now felt like a lifetime ago. "What will you study?" "Everything." Deep Chirp's antennae wiggled with excitement, but especially how different species can work together. "There's so much we can learn from each other." The formal ceremony began, with speeches about peace and understanding. But the real story, Stone knew, was in the smaller moments. In the human and manted children already playing together in the station's recreation areas. In the engineers from both species excitedly sharing ideas. In the doctors learning to treat patients of both kinds. Later that evening, as the celebration continued, First Scout found Stone watching the stars through the station's observation dome. "Mother says that sometimes the biggest changes start with the smallest choices," they said thoughtfully. "Like choosing to see someone as a person instead of an enemy." Stone nodded. "Your mother is very wise. The stories about humans will be different now," First Scout continued. "We'll tell about their strength, yes, but also about their kindness, about how they can be fierce warriors but also gentle friends, about how they protect children, all children." Stone felt something warm in his chest, the kind of warmth that came from knowing the universe was a little bit better today than it had been yesterday. "And what will you do now?" he asked the young mantid who had grown so much in these past months. First Scout's color shifted to a determined green. "I'm going to be a teacher," they said firmly, "to help both our peoples learn the whole truth about each other. Not just the old stories of war, but the new stories too. Stories about trust and mercy and hope." As Stone looked out at the stars, he saw not the old borders that had divided species, but new bridges being built between them. All because three scared children and one human captain had chosen to trust in the possibility of kindness. The legacy of that choice would echo through generations, in classrooms and homes across the galaxy, wherever people gathered to tell the story of the day when terrified alien children braced for death and found mercy instead.